before I discuss anything else, let me tell you how this each poem from this class is organized. Since it is the first poem, so it is going to be discussed under 8 headings. The first will be the title, My Mother at 66, or any other title. Then we will be discussing about the poet. The third, we will be discussing the central idea of the poem. The fourth, we will be explaining, we will be understanding each and every line by line, meaning of the poem under discussion. Fifth will be summary. Sixth, or before summary, we can discuss poetic devices. Poetic devices is before summary. And then after poetic devices, we will be discussing the summary. After summary, since it is the first poem, so I will be discussing what are the elements which are required in order to analyze a particular poem. And finally, we will be analyzing this piece or the work. So without spending much time on introduction part, let us straightforward begin the discussion of the title. My Mother at 66. What does it suggest? What does the title suggest? If you think over the title for some time, you can easily understand what the poet intends to convey to the readers through this title. So this is talking about 66, a particular age. So of course, the title is suggesting aging and the pain felt by a near or dear one. Universal, this is a universal theme. When aging starts creating emotional pain, or you can say starts evoking the fear of losing that person, this is what is the significance or the hint of the title. Now, let us discuss the second heading about the poet. It's written by Kamala Das, and here Kamala Das was born on March 31st, 1934. In, can you pronounce this word that I have highlighted? Punierkulam, Kerala, India. She was a renowned Indian poet, novelist, and short story writer. She is celebrated for her bold and unapologetic exploration of themes related to love, sexuality, identity, and the struggles of women in a conservative society. So from this highlighted part, you can understand what kind of poet Kamala Das would have been. She has been a bold, unapologetic poet who fearlessly takes up the themes of love, sexuality, identity, and moreover, how women's struggles in a conservative society like ours, where there is male dominance. Now moving on to the second paragraph. Das began her literary career at a young age, publishing her first poem at the age of 15. She wrote in English and Malayalam, showcasing her versatility as a bilingual writer. Writing both in English and Malayalam would mean writing in 2 languages. Her early works under the pseudonym Madhavi Kutti gained attention for her candid and provocative content. Provocative, here we are talking about the themes of love, sexuality, identity. So such things are provocative things, often challenging societal norms and gender roles. So how her themes are challenging societal norms? Because generally in a conservative society like ours, we do not openly talk about love and sexuality and women's identity or their struggle. And that is why talking about love and sexuality would mean provoking society and breaking the glass ceilings of women's world, means confines. Her poetry collection, Summer in Calcutta, which was published in the year 1965, marked a turning point in Indian English poetry. Let me take it ahead. Earning her recognition as the first feminist poet in India. Very significant, very important line you can understand from here. Moving on to the next paragraph. Throughout her career, Kamala Das's writing continued to provoke and challenge readers as she explored complexities of human relationships and the inner emotional turmoil of women. Actually, if you read about, I haven't read much about her life, but she has been a controversial figure, but because once she announced her love for a man, you can read about that, and that was, you can say, complex relationship, though she had a well-lit family. Her notable works include Descendants, which was published in the year 1967, The Old Playhouse and Other Poems in 1963, and her autobiography, My Story, in 1976. So this is a little about her personal life. Now moving on to the last paragraph of this part. Kamala Das's fearless approach to addressing taboos. What are the taboos? What does this word taboos means? Taboos are the subjects, the themes, or you can say the subject matters, the topics that usually writers, authors, poets avoid talking, like love and sexuality and women's struggles. So such subject matters like love and sexuality, which writers do not openly talk of, are called taboos. And her ability to capture the raw essence of human emotions in her poetry have left an indelible mark on Indian literature. Indelible, that cannot be deleted, that cannot be erased, is called indelible. Her contributions continue to inspire and empower generations of readers and writers. She passed away on May 31st, 2009, but her literary legacy lives on. So this is something about Kamala Das, and after that, let us discuss the central idea of this particular poem, My Mother at 66. Now, look at the theme of this poem, My Mother at 66. Have a look. I have already discussed that the central theme of this poem is aging and the fear it creates in the minds of a loved one. So here look at the first sentence. The central idea of the poem is the profound and poignant experience of the speaker here means Kamala Das, as she comes face to face with her mother's aging and mortality. This line is very, very important. So the kind of emotional experience, aging and mortality. Mortality means a fear of dying. Fear of dying creates. The poem begins, during a car ride to the airport. We will see this when we are explaining the poem. She observes her mother. So while she is going to airport by a car, her mother is sitting, who appears frail and ashen. You can imagine at the age of 66, frail means weak, and ashen comes from the word ash, color of ash. So it symbolizes aging and advancing towards death. Her face resembling means looking like that of a corpus, a dead body. So she is weak and frail, and her face looks like that of a dead body, corpus. This side, that her mother's face resembles that of a corpus, so this side triggers a deep sense of sadness and fear in her. This is very important. So this is a kind of fear, anxiety that evokes in Das's mind while she is traveling to airport in a car with her mother sitting beside, confronting her with the harsh reality that her mother is growing old. And this scene confronts her, triggers her, evokes feelings in her mind that her mother is now growing old and will be the guest of, you can say, a few years. Despite this emotional turmoil, that means despite these fears of her mother growing old and her fear of losing her, Das chooses to hide her own anxieties and fears, putting on a brave face and offering reassuring words to her mother. So how she faces, we will see in the explanation part. She starts diverting her attention from her mother's face, or you can say body, outside the car. The poem captures the universal theme of inevitability of aging and emotional struggle that comes with witnessing a loved one's decline in health and vitality. Memorize this line. So this is not a personalized thing, it is a universal thing that happens with each and every parent, each and every mother, each and every father, and the kind of anxiety, the kind of emotions it evokes in the aging person's daughter or son. It conveys the idea that even in the face of difficult emotions and the passage of time, the love and bond between a child and her parent endure. It also sends out the message that despite passage of time, the sweet relationship, the bond between a child, daughter and mother, son and father endure, goes on. The poem ultimately explores the deep and complex emotions that arise when confronted with the mortality of a loved one, and it highlights the endearing nature of mother-daughter relationship. So it also highlights the endearing, the strong relationship between mother and daughter. Now after this title, let us discuss the poem line by line. Now let us explain the entire poem line by line. Look at the introductory part. This poem, My Mother at 66, by Kamala Das, explores the poet's emotional experience as she observes her aging mother during her drive to Cochin airport. So from this highlighted part, you can understand that it is going to explore the poet's emotional experience, how she feels. The poem depicts different aspects of the poet's feelings and observations. So while she is on her journey to Cochin airport, different types of feelings, different types of emotions emerge in her heart, seeing her mother, which Das has expressed through this poem. Now look at the first line. Driving from my parents' home to Cochin last Friday morning, I saw my mother beside me. Appearance: doze, open-mouthed, her face ashen like that of a corpse. What does it mean? Look at the meaning. So here let me lift it a little and bring my image here. So in this stanza, the poet describes the beginning of a journey from her parents' home to Cochin. Here, from my parents' home to Cochin. And she notices her mother, who is sitting beside her in the car. I saw means noticed my mother beside me, sitting beside me. Then her mother in the car, dozing with her mouth open. So here she says doze, open mouthed, and then her face ashen like that of a corpse. So her mother's face is described as ashen, resembling that of a corpus, dead body, and this stanza establishes the physical condition. She is frail, she is weak, she is dozing, open-mouthed, and her face is resembling that of a corpus, a dead person, of the mother, and sets the tone of the poem. So it sets the tone for the further stanzas. So let us see what happens in the further stanzas. Hope you are understanding quite easily. Now look at the second stanza. And realized with pain that she was as old as she looked. As old as she looked, that means she was 66 years old and was looking of her age, how a 66 years old person should look, but soon put that thought away. What thought? That poignant, that emotional, that upsetting thought that her mother was frail with open mouth, and looked out at the young trees sprinting, the merry children spilling out of their homes. So in order to divert her attention from the reality of her mother's aging, she looks outside. The poet reflects on, means thinks, her mother's appearance and age, realizing with pain that her mother looks as old as she actually is. This sight of her aging mother upsets her, and therefore she briefly acknowledges this distress but quickly pushes it aside. Instead, she focuses on the vibrant and youthful scene outside the car window, where young trees are sprinting, means going behind past. Happy children are playing outside their homes, and this stanza contrasts her mother's aging with the vitality of the external world. So inside the car, she has a picture of a person aging, or you can say advancing towards death, but outside her car, the scene, the sight is quite different. The scene is the young trees sprinting, going past, and happy children are coming out of their houses. So these two scenes are contrasting the scene that she has outside. Now let us see the next stanza. Now look at this stanza. But after the airport's security check, standing a few yards away, I looked again at her. And how is she looking? Wan, pale as a late winter's moon, and felt that old familiar ache. So what happens? Now she reaches the airport, and after going through the security checks, the poet takes another look at her mother, and this time she appears even more frail and pale, and her mother's condition is likened to, means compared to. So she has compared her mother to a late winter's moon. What does it suggest? It suggests a sense of fading and approaching the end of life. This is very, very important. This is likely to come, suggesting a sense of fading and approaching the end of life. This is what a late winter's moon means. And the poet experiences a deep and old familiar ache. What does this old familiar ache refer to? It is linked to her childhood fears and concerns about her mother's mortality. So it refers to her childhood fear that she had, that her mother would leave her someday, depart from her someday. So this is the stanza. Let us move to the last stanza of this poem. Now let's have a look at the last stanza of this poem. The poet says, "My childhood's fear." The meaning should be clear from this phrase itself. "But all I said was, 'See you soon, Amma.' All I did was smile and smile and smile." So in this final stanza, the poet expresses her restrained emotions. What does this restrained emotions refer to? It refers to her childhood's fear that someday her mother would grow old and would advance towards death and would finally leave her in this world alone. But despite this poignant realization, this emotional, this painful realization of her mother's aging and fragility, means growing old and weak, she chooses not to voice her concerns directly. So, despite that painful realization that someday her mother would grow old and weak and would finally leave this world, leaving her alone, she does not voice her concerns directly. She does not say this. Instead of expressing her fear directly, she tells her mother, "See you soon, Amma." And in this way, she masks her emotions with a smile. Masks her emotions with a smile means she covers her feelings, her concerns, her apprehensions about her mother's aging and fragility and advancing towards death with a smile. So, hidden beneath that smile is Kamala Das's concern for her mother. The repetition of smile and smile and smile suggests the poet's attempt to maintain a facade of optimism and conceal her inner turmoil. This line is very, very important. So towards the end of this poem, the last line of this poem, "All I did was smile and smile and smile." So this repetition of the word smile suggests that her attempt to maintain a facade of optimism. The word facade means a show, an outer show. So through her smile, she maintains a show of hopefulness, optimism, and why, though it is natural that her mother is growing old, so it's natural, it's nature's law. So in order to conceal means hide. So in order to conceal her inner turmoil means inner feeling, the kind of waves that are emerging in her heart, which are waves of fear, concerns, apprehensions. So these are the inner turmoils that are emerging in her mind and her heart. But in order to conceal, in order to hide her feelings, her emotions, her painful realization, she bears smile on her face. So this is the explanation of My Mother at 66. I do believe that you must have understood. And so far as the remaining part of this discussion is concerned, it can be shared with anyone only on request. So far as poetic devices, this discussion, poetic devices is concerned, the summary part is concerned. After that, what are the elements that are required in order to analyze a particular poem, and finally, the analysis of this poem. So these 4 parts will be provided to you. If you need But I do think that this much discussion is enough for any exam. For deeper understanding of the poem, you will have to request for the remaining part of this lecture. Hope you must have understood, and whenever you are solving a question, just watch this video and see from which part of this stanza, which part of the poem it has been taken, and you can easily solve any question based on extract, or you can also write answers based on this discussion and explanation. So see you in the next lecture.